racist things happened to me in Nebraska. When me and my brothers were getting candy for a movie from a store, I had paid at the counter. And the cashier was like, "Do you want a receipt?" And I was like, "No, I'm in middle school. I don't need a receipt." So I just put the candy in my pocket because I'm about to go find my brothers. And someone stops me from behind and is like, "You can't steal that." Like just immediately, just like, "You're stealing. You can't steal candy." And I was like, "I'm not stealing. I bought this." And he says, "Where's your receipt?"
Hey everyone, I'm Nev Schulman, and this is Stories of Strength, a podcast by Juventus. Here, we're tackling the stigma around mental health by having open, honest conversations and sharing our stories. Today, I am joined by Charlie Curtis Beard, an incredible rapper, music artist, musician, producer, writer. I mean, what you do so many things. I could keep going.
I do all those things.
Did I get most of them?
Yeah, you got all
You're
of them.
also kind of an athlete now.
Athlete? Oh, because
you've
I'll be
been
running?
Yeah. You got a whole fitness thing on your social media.
I do. Yeah. I do have that. I wouldn't say I'm like an athlete, but I do like work. I do like working out. It's fun. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What's up, man?
Hey, you also forgot tap dancer, carpenter,
Are you being serious?
Pre-law. Yeah.
Are any of those for real?
No,
Okay.
It was a job.
I was excited about actually probably carpentry the most.
It would have been cool.
I love making stuff. Been cool. But that was always something that I kind of thought I should get into.
You look
I
the
love
part.
building.
You look the part, for sure. It'd be great.
Well, if you ever need some furniture put together,
I'll have your people call my people, my people call your people.
I will be there to help anytime. Anyway, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here. I know you have a lot going on right now.
I do, yes.
Which is very exciting. You want to just kind of quickly tell me a little bit about what you're working on these days?
Yeah, I'm really blessed right now. I'm able to do jobs like this where I get to travel, which is just always such a blessing. I am making multiple projects right now. I'm doing like a different kind of like, do you know what an EP is? It's a collection of like 3 to 5 songs, about 20 minutes worth of music. I'm doing multiple focus projects where I mix kind of different genres of music with rap. So I want to do a Latin fusion one. I want to do like a 4 on the floor dance fusion one too.
Love that.
I'm working on an album, like a soundtrack for a show right now. And I'm getting a little bit into acting right now too. There's a lot going on.
All right, now I'm actually kind of sorry that I asked. You're making me feel bad. You just got so much going on.
You have a million things going on.
Can I ask you a question? EP, from my, and hopefully I'm wrong, or maybe if I'm not, you can explain it to me. I always thought that stood for extended play, which was weird because why are EPs short?
Yeah, I think the concept of an EP is just, we had singles, right?
Right.
And
a single was more than a single.
Yeah, it's more than a single. It's an extended play, right? Singles would be 1 or 2 songs. It'd be one single release.
I see. So it harkens back to the record era.
They all do, yes.
Right, so singles used to be small, and then an
Extended
EP
play
was sort of a larger, right, okay.
And then we have long play, which is LP.
Okay, now that, so.
Long play is like an album.
Extended and then is not as long as long.
Yes.
Right, okay, extended from one, I see.
Yeah, I think that's how I conceptualize
I'm gonna go,
it.
that makes sense. I'm gonna use that for moving forward. Well, having recently familiarized myself with your music and a little bit of your story, it's fascinating. And I'm excited for you to share it with everyone. Can you take me back in time? Let's get on the sort of time machine here and go back to Nebraska, where you grew up, and let's talk a little bit about your childhood. I understand your parents were involved with the church, and that's sort of where you got your start in music. But I'd love to know just a little bit more about growing up in Nebraska as an expressive young man.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Or were you then? I don't know.
I definitely was. I definitely was. That's crazy that you know that. I didn't even know you knew that, that my parents were part of the church. Yeah, I grew up as a Christian. I wasn't even allowed to listen to secular music for a very long time. I had to sneak it. I was like sneak listening to, non-gospel artists about the time I was in high school. And yeah, so I kind of just grew up very expressive, always expressive. Me and my family would always be singing and making up songs and doing wacky stuff and acting out skits and it was insane. We would always be so expressive. I was very expressive. Not a lot of other Black folk around in Nebraska,
Yeah.
which was interesting because it definitely led me to have a very, I guess, an identity crisis in a certain way, because a lot of the Black people I was around would gatekeep Blackness, which made sense to me, right? Because if there's few Black people around an area, like gatekeeping it is kind of a way that you can prove that you're a part of this culture. And so, I was always told that I was like not, I was always told I wasn't like Black enough because I was in the AP classes and, I didn't hang around a lot of Black people back then. And interestingly enough, I would always kind of repeat that cycle. I would tell the nerdier Black people that they weren't Black enough. And yeah, so it was just really interesting. I had a huge identity crisis when I was younger because, who my self-expression didn't match what people categorized as Blackness in Nebraska.
What do you think people would have expected, or how do you think Blackness was perceived?
It's a very interesting question because, I'm not even sure I know the answer to that because I was on the outside of it. So I wasn't really on the inside. I didn't, me and my family, we weren't, I hate to use I hate to use the term stereotypically Black because that's not really a thing. But I guess that's just how like certain people viewed Blackness. And again, when Blackness is scarce, like places like Nebraska where the culture isn't as
Right.
huge, there's just a certain idea of how that looks, a certain idea of how you should dress, a certain idea of how you should talk, a certain idea of who you hang around, a certain idea of like what music you listen to. And me and my family just weren't really part of any of that. We were outside of all of that.
Well, that, I think, brings up an interesting conversation that I wasn't planning on having, just about representation. Because when you sort of struggle to find the right word to describe what you ended up calling stereotypically Black, maybe what you mean is the public perception of Blackness in a place where there aren't many Black people, which is mostly gleaned from media.
Yeah.
So if all you have seen of Black culture is from movies and the news, you think Black people tend to look and act a certain way.
Well, also, for sure, yes, that, for sure. I think Blackness does exist everywhere that Black people are. There is a element of Blackness that is legit and valid. So there is a proper form of Blackness that exists in Nebraska. It's not just like this stereotypical version of it, right? I think more so what I'm saying and what you're kind of touching on is, yes, there's a huge perception of what that is supposed to look like. And when you're outside of that, you aren't deemed Black for sure, 100%.
Right. Well, and maybe because you didn't have, because you lacked, or as you described, you were sort of gate kept from that community, it resulted in you feeling almost like you didn't belong in that community and couldn't identify with the other versions of perhaps Black community that you knew of.
Yeah. Honestly, it's so weird. It's being gate kept from your culture kind of makes you ignorant to it in a really interesting roundabout way. I remember thinking that this is insane to even think about now that I'm older. I remember really feeling like I was a Black person who was more proper because I talked a certain way, or was never going to be stopped by the cops because I dressed a certain way, or like all the things, not to get too political here, but basically I just kind of thought I was exempt from a certain level of Blackness. And like, since I was outside of the culture, I almost felt like I was better, which is not true at all, but that's just how it felt from the outside. So that's really interesting. That's a really interesting point. And I guess when you're gate kept from it, you do feel like you feel like you're on the outside of it. And I guess that was just kind of my way of coming to terms with the fact that I was kind of ostracized from that culture early on, you know.
Yeah.
But also I liked anime. I liked doing the Naruto run, which was so nerdy. I liked really lame things when I was younger. I was into cartoons and I didn't cuss and I did all this stuff when I was,
Sure.
you know.
Despite all of that, surely, and I don't know what, maybe we're off the rails here, but I'm interested. Despite all that, though, you did grow up as a Black man in America.
Yeah.
And particularly in a state that I'm sure has racism. I mean, everywhere has it, but maybe more so than others. What effect, if any, I'm assuming there were, did growing up Black, exposed to racism, I imagine, have on you in your development?
You know, it's so weird.
Mental development.
No, that's an amazing question. I just remember never thinking that I had been exposed to racism until I was older. I never even thought of it when I was younger. And racist things happened to me in Nebraska. I mean, I remember one of my first racist experiences being when me and my brothers were getting candy for a movie from a store. I had paid at the counter, and I was like in middle school when this happened. And the cashier was like, "Do you want a receipt?" And I was like, "No, I'm in middle school. I don't need a receipt." So I just put the candy in my pocket because I'm about to go find my brothers. And someone stops me from behind and is like, "You can't steal that." Like just immediately, just like, "You're stealing. You can't steal candy." And I was like, "I'm not stealing. I bought this." And he says, "Where's your receipt?" To like an 11-year-old.
Right.
I'm like, "Hello?"
Yeah.
Are you like, what's happening here? I didn't even know like that is.
At that moment, you probably didn't even register what that was.
Never even thought about it until later.
Right.
I was like, "Oh, wait." I was kind of profiled a little bit, like baby profiled a bit.
Right.
That's kind of silly. So I never even really thought about it. I never even thought I was experiencing racism until I was older. So yeah, like I was saying, like being removed from it, I kind of had this mentality where I was like, "Oh, I'm above it." But in reality, like I wasn't above it. I guess I was just ignorant to what racism looked like because I was removed from the culture a little bit.
Sure. Sticking to the theme of childhood development, because you definitely seem to touch on a lot of different topics in your lyrics, and a lot of it has to do with expectations and social norms, and interplay between people as far as relationships and sexuality, and it's tricky stuff. But you obviously do it very eloquently, and that's why I think it resonates with people. Can we talk a little bit about sexuality as far as it relates to also growing up in Nebraska with parents who were in the church, and just sort of what your experience was?
This is kind of a long-winded, roundabout way of answering it, but there is a point. Stick with me. I have ADHD, so
okay.
I just go from thought to thought. So I remember when everything kind of changed for me. It was about when I was 16 years old. I had cancer. I had cancer in my appendix. Really weird, right? Just strange.
Yeah.
I remember the doctors being like, "Nobody really has cancer in their appendix, and especially not at your age." So obviously they took my appendix out. I had to go get checkups and make sure I had no cancer anywhere else. I remember that whole process just being very jarring, especially as a 16-year-old. You're in high school, right?
Yeah.
You're just like, "Oh, I had cancer?" And I just remember that whole experience being so jarring to the point where I would just be like, "Oh, I want to do music shamelessly for the rest of my life. And that's it. Life's too short." I just remember just being like, I really don't know if tomorrow's promised, so I'm just going to go ahead and do what I want, regardless of what it means. And I kind of just held on to that mentality for the rest of my life. Obviously, for those that are listening to us and they can't like see the visuals, there's like that, right? I mean, I'm a rapper who has been painting his nails for a while, I got really cool nail polish on right now. It's like a really nice matte gel. I got some black French tips over pink nail polish. You feel me? Hey, what's up? I've been categorized in ways my expression has been categorized as like gay or feminine. But those words don't really bother me. I don't really care about that stuff anymore. And it used to be a big deal for me. I used to care about my perception a lot. But you're right, like self-expression is mad important to me. Being able to do it is really important because I don't know if tomorrow's promised. So I'm just gonna kind of express myself in however way I want to and do what I want relentlessly and unapologetically.
And did you always feel supported in that pursuit?
No. Not always, no. I mean, it's hard sometimes, you know. I think, you know, growing up Christian, becoming a rapper is very different from, you know, growing up in the church and singing gospel songs all the time. So it's not that I was ever not supported by my family and friends. I just I guess I just wasn't really great at music, first of all. I think a lot of my folks and a lot of my friends kept it at a distance. They were like, that's Charlie, we love him, and there's his music career. But the better I got and the more serious I got, you know, obviously that became one. And now all my family is super supportive of it. And they sometimes they even listen to my music. That's crazy.
Looking back now on the last 20 something years, what would you say was your darkest moment?
Honestly, the last few years of my life, about from 2020, I'd say 2022 to about 2020, the end of 2023. 2023 was a hard year for me. I just had gotten to this level of success where I just started to act out without worrying about the consequences of my actions. And that was really bad for me. I alienated myself in a lot of ways. I think for a lot of men in the world, when they reach a certain level of success and fame, there's this level of entitlement that comes with it. I don't know if this makes sense or if you've ever experienced this too, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe you're really humble and this really awesome person, which I would imagine that's the case for you, Nev. But for me, I just got this huge sense of entitlement. I started getting attention from girlies, and I've never gotten that at that level ever in my life, you know. And I started getting a lot of attention from brands and a lot of attention from people in general, and I was just like, oh, you know what? I deserve this. I took a lot of friendships for granted, a lot of relationships for granted, kind of just drove people out of my life. And I just remember at the end of 2022, I was on tour, which is the one thing I had wanted for my whole entire life. I just wanted a tour. I love performing. It's my favorite thing in the world. So being able to travel and perform was just a dream come true. And tour was great, but I just remember it being the most alone I had ever felt in my life. Because, you know, I was the opener and I was, you know, the band I was opening for was great and everything was super amazing. But I just remember just not having a lot of people in my life and being in some cities where I didn't know anybody. Obviously, in Idaho, I didn't know anyone in Idaho. Do you know anyone in Idaho?
I don't think so.
Exactly. So I was just...
Was there a moment that you remember being sort of rock bottom?
Yeah, there's a plethora of moments I remember being rock bottom. Not on tour only. I mean, I lost a lot of really close friends around that time too. I went through some heartbreak around that time too. And I'm not trying to victimize myself. I realized that a lot of the things I went through, I put myself in those positions, but you know, I just remember kind of always having this mentality when I was younger that I would go for music and everything 100%, and everything else would just kind of fall into place. Not really realizing that I have to put effort into other parts of my life in order for my life to be full and be worth living. Because I just put everything into music, everything I had, and that was my only focus. And sure, it made me more successful, but at what cost? Because I was losing a lot of the good things in my life and a lot of the people that were close to me. And I just remember this moment for a lot of 2023 just being success really doesn't mean a lot to me if I don't have people around me to share it with. And 2023, it really kicked my butt. It slapped me around, and that was a year of learning a lot. I had this lifestyle that was just focused on my success in music. When I was doing well, life was well, especially in LA. You know, if you're popping, people want to work with you. You're invited to all the parties. You're doing great. But I didn't have anything in my life that made it worth living. I was just successful in music. And that was the only thing that was going for me. And it just made it really, really, really sad. And when I was in depression, I was just like, I really have nobody around right now. And yeah, I feel like a lot of that was rock bottom for me.
During that time, were you diagnosed with depression?
No, I was not. But it felt like it because, there's just a feeling of numbness that a lot of people talk about. Yeah.
What that feeling was for you?
Yeah. I just remember I didn't clean my room for a really long time. Not out of laziness, just because I physically couldn't. And I didn't feel any motivation to do anything. I didn't feel any motivation to even like brush my teeth or do anything that was healthy for me. I didn't feel anything. I just felt tired. I always constantly remember the feeling of just being tired. I was in, really exhausting relationships, friend-wise and romantic-wise, toxic stuff. And just nothing really in my life was benefiting me. So everywhere I go, every day I'd wake up and I just remember just feeling so insanely numb and so removed from my emotions. I just felt like someone took the highs and the lows of everything you could possibly feel and just scrunched it up and compressed it. And that's just where I was. I just existed in this space. I didn't make any music. I didn't really make a lot of content. I didn't really do anything with my life around that time. I was just kind of existing, and acting out in ways that weren't beneficial to me, obviously.
What changed? What allowed you to come out of that dark place?
Well, first you have to want to, right? I didn't want to be in that position forever. I felt like that would be terrible. That wouldn't be worth it. I do remember also just being like, if life doesn't get better in the next few years, like I want out of life.
It got that dark.
I didn't see, if I wasn't successful in music and I didn't have people around me that I loved, I just really felt like there was no purpose for my life. You have to remember, I didn't have anything else going for me except for that. I didn't do anything else. And so it just, at that point, I was just like, oh, no, like that can't be the case. I want a life that's worth living. That's kind of when I started reframing what my career meant to me and what music meant to me and what success looked to me. Because I used to think success was just being the best at music and being successful in that.
Right.
But now I think success looks a lot like finding love. I think success looks a lot like finding friends that you can have in your life for a very long time. I think success looks like, after a long day of work, having somebody you can call and talk to. I think success looks like being able to wake up and go work out in the morning without feeling super dragged down by life. I think success looks like performing and then going home to a cat, There's just so much more substance in my life now that I didn't used to have. I started finding hobbies that I could just do by myself. I got into bowling. I'm in 2 bowling leagues right now. For real. It sounds so crazy, but bowling kind of saved my life because I just remember being so depressed all the time. And when I would bowl, I would not even think about depression. I would just be like, okay, how can I throw the ball that works with this lane? And there was like a few hours of the day where I just wasn't thinking about anything except bowling. And it was my escape. And it was a hobby. That wasn't music. I didn't monetize it. I didn't want to. It was just for me that I could just do by myself. I joined a league. I got into a community. I met more people. That was an out for me. I got into boxing. Boxing is like exercise, but like a good way of self-expression. Obviously, therapy works really well. Obviously, writing works super, super well. And that's just that's my home base. Writing will always be my escape. But with music, it was so tainted because it became my career and it became my life that I just like got to a point where I was like, oh man, even doing this is hard. So I implemented more meaningful relationships in my life. I got hobbies. I started taking care of myself and doing things that I could do by myself. And that's when my life kind of became more beautiful, more worth living, and have more substance in it.
You mentioned entitlement as something that you were struggling with. One of your most viral videos touches on entitlement from the perspective of, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but a guy who is upset that he asks a girl out and she says no.
Yeah, you called her a hoe because she said no, buddy. You're letting all your fragile masculinity show. I mean,
Right.
dude.
Well, and I
She
think
says,
masculinity and fragility are two things that men struggle with a lot, especially forever, but especially now. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as it relates to you and as it relates to your perception of the sort of culture that we're living in.
yeah, I mean, I think realistically, every guy just has a sense of entitlement, no matter what, especially to like the attention of women. When it comes to women, it's just kind of embedded in us as a society as we grow up. So there's always just a sense of entitlement to like women's attention and women's time, especially when you're doing nice things for women, which a lot of guys will misconstrue as, oh, you owe me something now. I bought you a drink. Now you get to talk to me for 5 minutes. I paid for the date. Now you get to come back home with me. You know, like there's just a natural sense of entitlement I think that guys have. Like, because a lot of the time we're taught, oh, if you do nice things for girls, like, you know.
Right, sort of this for that.
So with that song in particular, I just feel like, the message is guys really just don't understand sometimes when girls aren't into them, no matter what they do. And I think that a lot of men will do things for women, but not out of the niceness of their heart, but for something in return, right? That was me for a while.
Right. Well,
that was me for a while.
Right. And that's why I wanted to ask you about that, because I think a lot of guys at some point have to learn that, probably, through experience, that no matter how much you like someone and no matter how much you pursue them and court them and even shower them with affection or attention, it doesn't mean they're going to share or reciprocate those feelings.
Yeah.
So my question for you, as someone who I consider to be a very insightful, sensitive person who wrote a whole song about this issue, what, if any, ways have you learned to deal with that, to find yourself in a situation where you like someone or you provide someone with a favor or some sort of affection and then don't get the response that you hope for?
No, that's fair. Honestly, I learned the hard way. Sometimes with me in life, I have to learn things by getting hit upside the head. And I think part of, when I touched on this a little bit earlier, but part of the reason why 2022 and 2023 was hard for me is because I was driving some people away. And it was because of that. I used to be the kind of guy that would befriend girls with underlying intentions. And I used to, be nice to women because I had this sense of entitlement that they would like me. And I was getting attention from girls at that time, which was cool. But when you get attention from girls, you start feeling like you deserve it. It's the whole thing. So, obviously that led to some pretty tricky situations for me where I lost some really important friends that were girls in my life. And it hurts. I mean, it sucks. And it's not fun. I've lost a lot of people in my life and I have no interest in doing that anymore. I want meaningful substance in my life and I just want to be a better person. And yeah, so I started being more intentional. Intentional is the huge thing. I just started being more intentional. Drawing those lines is really easy for me now,
I really liked what you said about what success can be and what it can look like, from the smallest things to, bigger things like getting up out of bed and feeling motivated to go for a workout, loving your cat, or of course, having a best friend. There's so many small wins that we can focus on every day to get us just, one step forward, one small movement that allows us to sort of start our momentum for the day. I actually think if you haven't already, you could write a great song about like what success looks like and use all those examples. I think that would be great.
That's a good idea.
Feel free to freestyle right now if you want.
You're going to beatbox for me?
I said, that was the one thing I said I can't do is beatbox. All right, so here you are now. And I know from our conversations off the podcast that you recently met someone. I'm not going to get specific, but you're excited about a new person in your life.
Yeah, I am.
I bring it up because I think as someone who also was very misguided in my approach to affection, particularly in my late teens, early 20s, and concealed my insecurities with overconfidence and flirtation, and would have success in my flirtation, but was just constantly found myself in a cycle of disappointment and loneliness.
Yeah.
And looking for the next sort of hit, if you will.
Yeah.
Just to distract myself from the underlying unhappiness.
Yeah, the next, not hit, but like the next, the next fling.
Well, I mean, like a drug.
Yeah. Oh,
Right. Yeah. Like I'm so unhappy. I'm so lonely. I don't have the friend group that I long for.
Yeah.
The people I care about are uncomfortable around me because of my behavior.
Right.
What can I do? Oh, let me go see if I can hit on some girl at a bar and get hook up.
Yep.
Right. Anyway, so it took me a very difficult sort of rock bottom of being told how I appeared and came across by others around me that I cared about, and realizing, oh man, this is really not the behavior that I want to be known for. And I had to sort of reset, much like it sounds like you did.
Yeah.
And I still, even now at 40, married with kids, I still find aspects of my personality and behavior, and sometimes taking things for granted, less than satisfactory. And it's frustrating because I would like to think that at this stage in my life I'd be exactly where I want to be, but I'm not. And I think that's another thing that people don't really talk about as much as they should, which is that maybe it's a cliche because it's real, but you're always hopefully growing and changing and learning, and hopefully the people around you love you enough to
Hold you accountable.
Will hold you accountable and help show you and teach you and explain to you, even if it takes many times, what you're doing that could be better. And so it sounds like now you've mended perhaps some or lost some relationships, which is at times even more helpful, weirdly as it sounds.
Yeah, like sometimes in life you need to go through it. You need to lose some of the people in your life. I mean, it's not fun, but like sometimes that's just what you have to go through. But yeah, I have people in my life now, yes, that I am excited about and that are very meaningful, that I can see being in my life for a very long time. So yeah, I think that's a huge thing for me. I've always kind of struggled with relationships in that regard, not like romantic ones, like friendship ones.
Sure.
And so, I mean, romantic too, but
yeah,
I've struggled with friendship relationships in my life a lot, and so having those people that can hold you accountable and can be close with you, and
sure.
I think that's really important. That was pivotal for you and your change.
Totally. Well, and as it relates to losing people, it dawned on me that the term, getting burned, right? And having scars makes a lot of sense, because when you do get burned and it leaves a scar, you never forget about it. And you're constantly reminded, oh yeah, that's something I lost.
You don't want
and it stays with you forever. And that's why I think, show your scars. You need them. It's important to have things that remind you of your past, and even more so, things that have hurt that you've had to grow from and learn about.
You know what's crazy is that the way that musicians do that is by writing about it, right? Mm-hmm. When you're a musician, you're encouraged to write about your emotions. It makes for really good music. Honestly. I released this album earlier this year called Love in LA. And it is very, very deep and very, very personal. If you listen to it, you just hear a ton of heartbreak. It's an album just about, a few different heartbreaks I had. And It was so cathartic and so healing and so lovely and everything I needed. And it's so personal. And I just feel like it's really written well. But the interesting thing is that also has an effect on people in your life. Because the girls that those songs were about, obviously they could tell it was about them, and it was hard for them too. It made things in their life difficult. I think I learned pretty recently that I don't want to heal at the expense of other people I love. So I don't want to heal if it means hurting the people that I actually care about. I don't think that's fair to them. So it's just really interesting as an artist, when you bear it all and release it, it can still have an effect on the people you love and the people you care about. So it's really interesting. Like, I think the bigger thing I would give, like, if I were to give advice to any musician, I would say you got to have a life outside of music too. It can't be 100% music. Music is fantastic. It is a great tool for self-expression, healing, just emotional connection with people in general. Music is a gift because everybody listens to it. So it's beautiful, but it can't be the only thing. It can't be the only thing in your life. It can't be the only thing you use to heal. It cannot be the only thing you use to find happiness. It can't be your only hobby. You have to build a life that is worth living outside of music. And this might apply to other career fields too. But, you can't only communicate through your music. You have to learn how to talk to people through therapy. You can't, use music as an escape, because when music becomes your job, it's not an escape anymore, it's work. And then you have to have another escape. There's just so many things in life that just there's so many things in life that makes life more worth living when it's also as prevalent as your career. And putting time into that is so essential. It makes your life way more worth living, way happier,
For the kid living in Nebraska who dreams of a life outside of their small town, a life outside of the church, a life outside of the small lens through which they've sort of experienced their existence, what would be some tips or tools that you might be able to share from from your experience in terms of mentally accepting where you are, appreciating what you have, but also knowing that there's more for you and that this is not the end of the road?
Well, first of all, I just want to say to anybody that is listening to this, that is in a small town, that feels misunderstood or feels ostracized or just cast out, you're valid. Your existence is valid. Your existence is valid. You existing as a person is enough. And if you're Black, then you being Black is more than enough. You don't have to try hard to be something that you already are. You existing as a Black person already makes you Black enough. So you don't have to question it, even if there's not other Black people around you. Just exist in your culture, exist in your space, and be truthful to it, and just be honest. Appreciate the culture. And your existence in it is more than enough. I want you to feel validated. I don't want you to feel alone, because you aren't. If you listen to my music, hopefully you feel less alone, because that's all I want to do with my music, is make sure people don't feel alone. I would also say that going for it is scary and very hard, but always worth it. Again, and this would go for anybody who's, 13, or someone who is 40, or someone who is 50. Put effort into making your life worth living. It is so much easier said than done, but putting the tools that you need in your life to make it worth living is so important. So if that means going for a career that takes you outside Nebraska, put effort into it. If that means finding people or consoling in people that are close to you and diving into that, do it. Whatever form it means, or whatever shape and form that takes place, go for it. I wouldn't, do substance abuse or anything bad like that, but things that are good for you,
Sure.
Yeah. And go for it. Go for it unapologetically. but be mindful and watch that entitlement.
Are your plans to continue making music?
Always, I think my relationship with music might change as I'm older. As I'm not really interested in grinding on social media forever. That seems so not fun, right? Like, I'm not really interested in making 5 videos a week for the rest of my life. I feel like that's really, really difficult. So my music, like making music to promote it on social media to like have this big blow up moment, that will probably change for me the older I get. But I don't think I'm capable of stopping music. Like, I will always make it. I've been doing it since I was little because it's just what expression is to me. So I don't think that's ever going to go away. I'm always going to be making music, but my relationship with it will probably change, like as it does with everybody.
So before we wrap up, is there anything that you may have thought to share or feel like we didn't cover?
What we need to do for mental health, honestly, I'm not even going to try to be that guy where it's like men's mental health. But nah, for real, like men's mental health, like we got to focus on this. And not like, we shouldn't focus on mental health, like men's mental health as a way to distract from like women and what they go through. No. Because what we're not going to do here today is sit here and act like, women and women, like none of that.
No, we're not comparing.
No. A lot of the time, what men will do though is like women will be like, oh, women go through this, and they'll be like, oh, but men are more suicidal than like. It's like, okay, no. Men's mental health exists in its own thing.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is focus really on that. Guys, listen, I'm talking to you now. All the men out there. Check the entitlement, Don't worry about toxic masculinity. You can be yourself. You can paint your nails. You can wear makeup. You can wear whatever you want. The idea of a man is what you make it. It's not what other people make it. Also, go to therapy. Learn how to communicate. Please, because if you're above the age of 26, you should know how to communicate to people thoughtfully. You should know how to talk to people. You should know how to express yourself, and not in an angry way. There's just such like a deep misunderstanding of like mental health for men, and just like men just like can go through life without worrying about it because we have that privilege. Thank God we have that privilege. The world it revolves around us and is built around us. So we never have to check it. But check it, dude. Like, don't just sit there and be comfortable in your ways. It's uncomfortable to change for sure, but it's so much better. So go learn how to communicate, watch that entitlement, and focus on yourself. And it'll make the world a better place. I really want to like teach guys this. Like, if my ideal thing is if I like reach a certain level of success, I want to be able to talk to young men about like what good mental health looks like, what communication looks like, what consent looks like, all these things, and teach them from a young age. Because a lot of the focus is pointed towards women, and I don't think that's fair to girls because they're not asking for a lot of the problems that men create. So I want to be able to like help guys. Yeah.
It sounds like you're already making the efforts to do that.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe one day I'll start a nonprofit or work with a nonprofit. That'd be cool.
Wow.
What is that?
No, that was.
I
liked your closing statement. Very strong.
Thanks.
Thank you, Charlie, for sharing your story and your journey with us. It was a real privilege. And make sure you all stay tuned.
Wait. Before we close, when we close, you have to get it. You have to say, "Oh my!" That's my thing.
Yes, of course.
So you have to hit us with an "Oh my."
Is there a way to say it?
Yeah. There's multiple ways to say it. But how would you do it? How would you say it?
Oh my!
That's a pretty good one.
Okay.
I'm not mad at it. You want to know how I do it?
Yeah.
There's multiple ways. Sometimes, and it's a more serious track. I'm like, "Oh my," or "Oh my," but the classic, patented Charlie "Oh my" is "Oh my." So
yeah.
You want to do one like that?
Oh my.
Oh my. It's great.
That's your thing. It's good.
You sounded good doing it.
Thank you.
All right, cool.
Well, thank you, Charlie, for sharing your story and your journey with us. And make sure you follow us to hear more stories of strength.